Soul Fantasy Show, Soul Fan Show. Hey, it's a Soul Fantasy Show live for April 21st. Still waiting on content for LOL, NBA, and NFL. We're gonna go over the draft, whatever we can find here. Today, we're gonna go over the top players for FanDuel and their salaries. So, for the 76ers, right on top is Joel Embiid. He's the top player. So we'll go there. All right. He is 9-6 on FanDuel, averaging 45 fantasy points. Okay. And for DraftKings, he's averaging 47 fantasy points. So that's your best option on the Sixers. All right. Obviously, the Bucks is Giannis. He's 11-6, though, getting about 57 fantasy points a game. So he's a little expensive. So on the Bulls, it's Zach LaVine. So these are gonna be MVPs that you target, and just players you gotta start putting in your core. So Zach LaVine for the Bulls, just start to get to know some of these guys. Andre Drummond, he's quickly become the best player on the Cavaliers in Sims. So it's SNBA now. So it's not the same whether Andre Drummond was rusty or not. He's not rusty in here. So we got the top 5, Kevin Love, but Andre Drummond, he's 9-8, averaging 47 fantasy points a game. So get to know these guys really well. All right, so we obviously got Kawhi Leonard, and Paul George is way under him. He's 7-6, so you don't have to play Paul George when you're thinking about rostering Clippers all the time, because there's obviously going to be a lot better players, and Kawhi Leonard is definitely the top player, getting that close to 50 fantasy points a game. When you're drafting an MVP, you definitely want somebody getting 50 fantasy points. So the Memphis Grizzlies, they're all about even there. Val, Morant, even Jared Jackson Jr. So we'll just steer clear of that team at all costs if we can, but sometimes it's a one-game slate, so you can't. So the Hawks, it's Trae Young. We'll go over him real quick. He's getting over 50 fantasy points a game on DraftKings, around 47.6 fantasy points. He's 10K. That's not too bad. 10K for somebody getting more points than most of the people we've been over so far. The Miami Heat is Jimmy Butler at 8-6, 42 fantasy points per game. So that's, not where we want. We want the 50. All right, now a bad team here to roster usually would be the Charlotte Hornets. They're pretty bad. So I would just steer clear of them. And if you have to roster Graham, all right. So on the Kings, same scenario. We got De'Aaron Fox. I mean, he's an option. I usually, when in the regular NBA season, I would go to Fox. He can get you close to 40 fantasy points per game. Okay, so we went over the Bucks and all that. Sorry about that. The Hawks. Let me get back down to where I was at. Some slates aren't available. Teams aren't available. Obviously, we got a lot of people that I've talked to in this group are playing LeBron James and Anthony Davis side by side whenever they are up there. So for the Lakers, you're going to go LeBron James. He's well over 50 fantasy points. He's at 55. He's 11K. Sorry about that. And Anthony Davis, he's a little bit lower and a little bit less money, but not much less. So obviously, when you're playing Lakers, you're playing those two together. Yes, you are. All right, obviously Luka Doncic. Everybody plays Luka Doncic. That's obvious. We don't really have to go over that. The Brooklyn Nets. We know Kyrie Irving is the play. Nuggets. Nikola Jovic. I would definitely go him every time he's available because he's going to get you that 50 fantasy points. So we need to know who's getting 50 fantasy points per game, and that guy has to definitely be thrown in your lineup. So here we got the Pacers. Nobody's hitting 50 fantasy points, so you can go any direction. You could go Miles Turner. I wouldn't care. All right, the Pelicans, we have a pretty top all five guys are pretty swell, pretty fine. 40, 40, 36, 33, and 20. Even Derek Favors getting damn near 30 fantasy points. So, depending on their salary that day, you're just going to go pick one of them guys, all right? And as for the Pistons, I would be wary of them. I would not trust Wood too much. I would not trust Derrick Rose for that high salary to get 30 fantasy points. I'm out. Okay, so we got the Raptors, obviously Siakam, and I mean Lowry's pretty cheap too. Siakam's always a little more expensive because he's only getting 40 some fantasy points. So let's see, Lowry, he's getting the same amount. So I would definitely go Kyle Lowry over Siakam. I'm not paying that extra salary to get 2 more fantasy points. So even, let's see, Fred VanVleet. He's a little bit lower. So when you're picking your MVP and it has to do with the Raptors, I would go Kyle Lowry. All right, so the Rockets, obviously, we always love James Harden and Russell Westbrook, and they are bar none, by far, way ahead of all the other players on the Raptors. So, wow, look at that. Look at James Harden. He's going to get you 60 fantasy points a game. So, sorry about that. Sorry, I got to keep scrolling here when we go in there long term. All right. So, he's going to get you 60 fantasy points per game. He's almost $1,000 more than Westbrook. But Westbrook, he's getting 50 fantasy points per game. I would go either one. I like both of them. Sorry about that. I like both. That's another. So LA and the Rockets, when they play, you're playing both of those two studs at the same time. You're playing Harden and Westbrook together, and you're playing AD and LeBron together. The Spurs, they're pretty much even. As I said in previous videos, I like DeMar DeRozan. There we go. Ayton, I do not like playing. I'd definitely much rather play Booker. So 40 and 41, for 8, I would save the 800 and just go Booker if I have to play my MVP, or just play squarely a Phoenix Suns guy. I would definitely go Booker there. So here we go. All right, so OKC, you got Paul, SGA. Wow, that's a little tough. I mean, I would just go SGA. Paul is always disappointing. Karl Anthony Towns, clearly the top favor. He gets 51 fantasy points a game. He's definitely the top favor. Paul George. Sorry about that. Got a couple teams left. So, Karl Anthony Towns. Sorry, Paul George. Karl Anthony Towns is the clear MVP favorite and the clear play. Anytime you see Minnesota playing, you could definitely attempt to throw other players in like that. Okay, now CJ McCollum was on fire at some point in the season when Damian Lillard was out. But now Damian Lillard is in, so he's definitely the play to go. All right. Those are the last two. So we'll go, obviously, Bradley Beal. There's nothing on the Wizards, so you're just going to go with Bradley Beal. Sorry. All right, we'll go that. So he's can get you 50 fantasy points per game. So there's our 50 guy. That's him. All right, let me just go to that last one I wanted to go over. So we will go over Damian Lillard real quick. Let's see Lillard before we end the video. And we'll get you lineups whenever they post up. For NBA, NFL, we'll get LOL data whenever it comes up. NHL, MLB, whatever data comes up, I will be posting on here, trying to help you guys learn players. You're going to have to research and you're going to have to learn players. So today we're just going over like the top guys that might get you 50 fantasy points, or actually will get you 50 fantasy points every time you play them. So everybody I mentioned today will definitely get you 50 fantasy points every time you play them. So they're definitely great plays. So keep them in mind every time you're rostering your captain. It's not necessarily obvious to everybody. Some people just fade guys like this out. I've seen it. Not everybody knows every player. Some people just know players they like. They don't know every player on every team. They can get them 50 fantasy points. They've heard of the players. Most people in my group are experts, so you might not need this, but it's really good to just start to like refresh on the top studs of the NFL or NBA. We're going to go over NFL. We'll go over studs. We'll go over scrubs, stars, scrubs, mid-level guys. As the days go on, we'll just, keep going over different players and start memorizing players. And we're going to be big into the NFL draft and the NFL season and how that's going to play into DFS going forward, because we're going to have a big NFL season. So stay tuned for a lot of NFL content, because I know you guys love NFL and I know you really need content. It's going to be hard to get it, especially if there isn't a season, but we need to at least prepare for a season, because hopefully there will be a season. All right, it's the Soul Fan Show.